You're listening to the Flex Success podcast, where we teach you how to be less shit.
I'm your co-host Lizzy, and this is Dean. We'll be covering all topics relating to health, fitness, and bodybuilding.
Join us as we use our in the trenches experience and up-to-date science to provide you with information that you can actually use.
If you like what we do, be sure to give us a like, follow, share, and tag us on social media.
G'day everyone. Liz, also hello to you.
Hello, Dean.
I would love to say that we're in different parts of the world, but we are not. We are just in different parts of London.
We are. Dean, you are at a really awesome co-working space. I'm sure people have heard of it. It's around the whole world, called wayyyyy. And I came to work with you yesterday. We worked in separate parts of the office, though, however, because we do like to work separately. And I found out that they are dog friendly. And today I'm going on a date with a man named George, who is a 9-month-old Cavalier. And if things work out, then, I plan on joining WeWork and taking him with me.
Yeah. And we also got free Caribbean food yesterday. It was amazing.
It was amazing. So just to give some context to my date, the handsome George.
With another man.
I joined a dating website where humans get to match with dogs. And so these are dogs who are, owned by people, but the people are injured or sick or old or really busy or whatever it is. And their dogs just need a little bit of attention during the day or, whatever it is, walked on the weekends or something like that. So in about an hour, I'm going to go meet up with George and I'm very excited. But more importantly, what's happening with you, Dean?
Well, I guess in reverse order, we've got a couple of our Flex Pros coming into like the end of their preps for their 2024 season, which is looking really, really good. We've got Alex Connors coming in for Classic in 7 weeks for the Tampa Pro, and then also Cam George. They're traveling together, which will be lots of fun. He's doing the Tampa Pro also as a 2-on-2, and this is his pro debut season, which is even more exciting.
I very much enjoy when people state their weight in pounds. 2-on-2 sounds super impressive, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I remember the first time that I hit like 114, I think it's 114.2 or 0.3 kilograms. I was like, yes, I'm 250 pounds. And like that was like a yardstick for me. So then I'm no longer in kilograms, I'm only in pounds. But then we've also got Callum Hinze. He's only 4 weeks out. So he's coming up to the Taiwan Pro and then he'll do the Dubai Pro, which is looking absolutely massive and crazy money at the Dubai Pro, which I'm really excited to see him. He's already leaner than what he was last time in his debut season. He's about 8 kilos up on that show. So
what is the prize money in Dubai?
Oh, it's in the hundreds of thousands. It's big, like way more money than anywhere else at all, except for the Arnolds and the Olympia. So they're like really pushing the limits, and Classic especially, you got a much bigger pay packet than what they get at the Olympia. Because I think at the Olympia they still currently only get 50,000 USD, and Men's Open gets 400,000 USD. Yeah. Yeah. And then rounding it off, when this podcast goes live on Monday, we will have just had Kuba finish his first show for the season as well. He's competing at the Emperor Classic in Spain, which has got an absolute monster lineup. So it's going to be a really good test for him to see how much he's progressed. And yeah, we just had him on the podcast, and that obviously all then brings us to this podcast too, Liz, because we had heaps of really good feedback from the last podcast with Kuba. It was episode 135, I believe. And it was on the importance of routine. So we thought we'd throw it back. I don't remember the number. What number was that previous?
I think it was like episode 73. So we had Kuba on the podcast just as we moved to England 2.5 years ago. We were living at Jeffery's house because I remember doing the podcast in the little desk nook of our bedroom. There in the Midlands in England. And I think it was the first time I properly spoke to Kuba. And I was really impressed with, I suppose, his to be good at bodybuilding, you have to have a lot of dedication, which it's very evident that he has. But I really liked how he knew what he was giving up. He knew what sacrifices he was making, that, balance doesn't exist. And he went into the whole process with eyes wide open, which I think is something that a lot of bodybuilders don't do. They slowly, they have this dream that I can be this or I can be that. And the illusion of balance and whatever. And they go into it and they give up this small thing. And then they have to give up this other small thing. And eventually they're in this position that like, oh my God, how did I end up here? But Kuba, he seemed to have understood right from the beginning what it was and what he was doing, and he accepted it. And he's in a position now, we spoke about in episode 135, the last episode, where he's really successful. He's really happy with his life, all the sacrifices he's made. He knew he was going to anyway, so he doesn't kind of resent them. So yeah, I really liked this, the first podcast we did that we're about to replay now for you guys. It was a really good chat. And I think a lot of bodybuilding podcasts either talk about like, kind of gossip in the industry or the nitty gritty science. And although like that stuff is interesting and sometimes we do that too, I think kind of looking at these endeavors a little bit more philosophically has a lot of weight, a lot of utility. And there's a little bit of that in this episode we're going to replay now. So without further ado, I should probably mention, we can't tell you, this is coming out on Monday, how Kuba went in his competition the weekend just passed, because we are recording this introduction on the Friday before the weekend. So we don't know.
We shall see.
We shall see. All right, let's get into it.
Hello. So my name's Kuba. I am a bodybuilder from England. I'm a gym owner. I'm a coach. So I do try and juggle quite a few things. But I think, how do I describe myself the best way? I live and breathe bodybuilding, but sport has been a part of my life for a long time. I started off boxing when I was 11. So as you can imagine, from a very young age, I was always very committed towards doing anything to do with competing, anything to do with sports. But it's never really been football. It's never really been rugby, which is the two most popular ones in England. It's kind of dived straight into boxing. And then whilst I was boxing, I was obviously lifting. And then it kind of had a more of a shift towards bodybuilding when I was 16. And then the story kind of follows on from there. Obviously started competing, started coaching, started personal training, opened up the gym. And that's kind of, it all kind of followed on from a young age to build up to where I am now. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell, without kind of diving into the history too much. But yeah, that's
into the personal details.
I do.
Yeah, without getting the book out and getting all that out of there. Yeah.
So you went from getting other people to punch you in the face to punching yourself in the face with hunger.
Pretty much that's pretty much the way I would describe it. But
yeah,
I think that the sports, the sport does have a correlation in a way, because they both require the same amount of commitment that you put towards it. Because with bodybuilding and boxing, I think they both are a sport that you need to devote yourself to it in a big way. But I think the devotion towards the sports, for me anyway, has definitely had a huge carryover into everything else I do in my life as well. So I think the big point that I think we may need to touch on is, a lot of people find a lot of negatives with what we do, which is, arguable, peds, all that, the dark side. But I think the biggest positive thing that a lot of people undervalue is the habits that we create as bodybuilders, as athletes. When you actually apply the same habits and the same principles towards your business, towards your other avenues in life, I feel like there's nothing that you cannot achieve. So I think, again, to listeners right now, I think the biggest point that a lot of people can take away from is, bodybuilding doesn't just give you an opportunity to progress as an athlete or, progress your physique. For me, bodybuilding has given me a way to be able to reach something that I would never be able to reach if it wasn't part of my life.
Can you give me an example of some of the habits that you carry over from bodybuilding into other areas of your life?
Definitely the discipline side of things. I think in past, and the kind of the environment I was in, especially from a younger age, would have definitely led me to a different path in life, and I would have been in a different place than I am right now. And I think the deeper I got into bodybuilding, the more committed I was, the more disciplined I was, the more discipline I also had towards business, and the more discipline I also had towards, obviously, my gym and my clients. So for me, it's more so being able to start a task and make sure that you do it properly. As with bodybuilding, you can't really take the approach of being half-hearted with what you do. Yeah. And I think that's the same approach I had towards my work, towards my life in general. And I think that has really allowed me to reach heights that I'd never ever even dream of as a kid and as a person that I was back in the day.
Do you think that those behaviors that a bodybuilder typically is associated with, like highly regimented, highly routine based, very focused, do you think they helped guide you through these other factors? Or do you think that because of the fact that you had to be so regimented and routine, that it almost forced your other things to follow suit?
Was it the chicken or the egg?
Yeah. I think a little bit of both. I think it put me on the right path, because it could have been two choices back in the day, where it was either you stay disciplined and you focus on doing the right things in life, which is the coaching, the bodybuilding, the training, or it could have gone down a totally wrong way and wrong path in my life where, you know, it would have been a total mess. So I think the discipline and structure has given me almost a strength and confidence to be able to excel in business and excel in what I do as well.
Mm. So why did you decide to go into business, which is opening up your gym, called
Ultraflex?
Ultraflex.
And I said Rotherham,
Ultraflex.
but you say it far more fluently.
How do you pronounce it?
So initially, it wasn't really, the goal was never to make a business of it. The goal was just to open a gym because that was a dream. Mm-hmm. And initially, it was actually called Iron Athlete. So the doors kind of opened in 2017, January 9th. And I definitely started out too early, as I would say, especially the mistakes that were made. I was involved with some business partners, and that didn't kind of work out too well. But long story short, that kind of all parted ways. We ended up buying them out. And then I joined forces with Ultraflex. But reason why I wanted to open a gym initially, it was just because I loved training so much. And for me, since I was a kid, and since I first started competing in bodybuilding, the dream was always to open up a gym. Like the gym I trained at the time, that was the only real bodybuilding gym in the area. So every serious bodybuilder, like anyone who was, you know, anything to do with bodybuilding, trained at that gym. We had natural professionals, we had IFBB pros train there. So it was like a mixture of, you know, every single top guy training there. And as a kid, I always look back on that and I was like this is what I want. And I want a gym like this. I want, you know, especially the owner, everyone kind of like looked up to him and he was like the man go-to. So for me, it was always like kind of follow his footsteps and, you know, be a little bit like him. So for me, it was always a dream to really open a gym. And initially it was never really to make a business of it. And as you can imagine, obviously I was young when we opened the gym, and the real finances wasn't really there to make it a true business, so to speak, and you know, make it big. But it was enough to make it work, and it was enough to make it successful, to the point where, you know, again, it was more so a process where as I got more committed towards my bodybuilding and as I got more serious with my bodybuilding, I got more serious with business as well. So for me, I always say this, it's like the better I got at bodybuilding and more of a bodybuilder I became, I started to become serious in all other avenues in life as well. I started to behave myself a lot more, and I started to actually progress as a coach a lot more, progress in my business with the gym as well. And that is when I got into partnership with Charlie and Mike, and obviously Ultraflex happened, which was actually 2 years after I actually opened the gym. So that was like end of 2018, beginning of 2019, when we actually turned it into Ultraflex.
Well, it was only just recently a birthday then too, if it was the 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the birthday month. I had my birthday on
5
the 10th.
years. 5 years.
I had my birthday on the 10th.
Yes.
You had the birthday from the gym on the 9th. Joe's birthday was on the 13th.
Was it yesterday?
Joe Jeffery yesterday, yeah.
So I have a shaved patch at the back of my head. For those on YouTube, let me show you. I shaved Joe into my head. Hang on. We changed it though, because I messaged a photo of it to my friend Dom. I was just laughing about it, and she's like, "It's my birthday too." So we changed Joe to Dom, and so it's somewhere in between now. But let me show you.
You have to go. She has to go side on though.
Yeah. So it was Joe, but now if I tilt my head this way, it's Dom.
That's probably the worst D I've ever seen. My handwriting's terrible. But Dean, don't ever let me, you know. Mate, it's lucky my hair's terrible, like, but I still wouldn't let you shave it.
Look, if I can start with a fresh canvas and not try and turn a J sideways into a D, I think I can do all right.
It was pretty good before we changed it to Dom. Look, I cut my own hair with nail scissors. I really don't give a shit about my hair. So when the idea came up, I was just typing away on my laptop and I was like, it's just hair, it'll grow. So happy birthday to you for recently, and to Joe for yesterday, and to you for Monday.
Yeah. What
was 9 months ago? Some mums were getting busy 9 months ago if everyone's being born
It's
now.
the off season for football.
That's it.
Yeah. That is actually a common trend in Australia. A lot of rugby league players have their kids in the off season because it's sort of like at the peak of the season, they're not too fatigued. They're still going well.
Yeah.
You know, the season progresses, the focus goes towards the football or the rugby league. They start to, forget about their lovely wives and partners, and then they're pregnant the whole time, and then baby comes and they start again.
Baby season.
That's awesome.
But I wanted to ask, so you mentioned that, it was always a dream of yours, but then you got really serious with business and bodybuilding around the same time. How, or do you feel like you can juggle other aspects of your life well? Or do you feel like all balance is out the window when you're super focused on bodybuilding?
You mean life?
And business? Yeah. Like, do you feel like you can juggle friendships and personal hygiene and like other hobbies if you have them? Or do you feel like all your energy gets sucked into these things and like that is just the cost of being ultra successful?
Ultra.
Depends on what level you want to do it at.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be as successful as you physically can, there's no such thing as balance. There's literally no such thing as balance. So for me at the moment, it's just literally my coaching, my bodybuilding, and the window for anything else is pretty much very, very small. Whether it's my friends, and even I'm lucky enough for a partner to do what I do. Otherwise, I don't think a normal person would be able to put up with what I do and how I am.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be able to get everything done in a day and still be able to stay on top of my own bodybuilding and top of my own structure. Not only it does require ultimate commitment, but the discipline day to day is super high as well, to the point where it's like certain events I won't really attend to, because I know that if I miss a couple of hours sleep a night, it's going to throw my whole schedule off across the week. And if it throws my schedule off across the week, then it's just me chasing my own tail for the whole week. And that's not really worth doing so right now. So it all depends as to how far you want to make it and what you aspire to do and what you want to do. When I look at my life now compared to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it changes on a massive scale. If you looked at my life 3 years ago, it was a lot different than this. It was probably upside down compared to what it is right now. Whereas right now, every single hour to the day is accounted for. So beforehand, it was never like this. So right now, to get everything on point, there is very little balance. Like, don't get me wrong, we have our rest days, we have times where, we do have a little bit of time together, but it's not to the point where I can say, right, today I'm just going to go and do this, because it's not. Like, the whole week is planned and structured and planned ahead as well. So, I know there's a little window to do this on that day, and that's about it. That's as far as the balance goes, so to speak. But in terms of like wake time, bedtimes, that is the most important stuff for me that needs to be really, really adhered to. That has been a game changer for me to be able to really, really, really be productive with my own bodybuilding and with my coaching and with my gym business as well.
I was going to say this. I was going to ask the question, but you pretty much answered. This sounds like a conscious decision around how you now set your day up to achieve all of these tasks, as opposed to you've just fallen into this and it's a whirlwind.
Yeah, and it sounds like you also accept the cost of it, because I wonder if a lot of people want to be successful but don't realize the costs, or they think they're under this illusion that they can be ultra successful in one or two domains of their life and still have balance and free time, which is included in balance. And I think being willing to accept those costs is mandatory when trying to be really successful at a couple of things. That's why I personally don't want to compete in bodybuilding, because I value balance and spontaneity, not that I don't have structure, far more. And I know that I can't choose both, and I don't choose being successul in bodybuilding.
It was yesterday. She came out and she had a little bit of banana with a tiny bit of Nutella on it. I went, oh, that looks good.
It was.
And she went, yeah, tracking macros sucks, man. And I was like, fuck you.
I measure Nutella with a spoon, not on a scale.
Listen, I totally agree, because it's not really normal what we do, because you get in such a habit that you never really even look at food normal anymore. Like, I can guarantee you now, when Dean sees food, he just looks at it and he sees numbers. He doesn't even see the food. Like, it's just the way it is, because it's so engraved in your brain. It doesn't become quite normal. But yeah, I definitely see your point, because with bodybuilding, it consumes you so much that you don't really see anything else. But sometimes you can use that kind of focus into the other areas. But then when you do that, literally nothing else exists. So your life doesn't really, your life isn't quite as normal, to be honest. So no, it really isn't. Like, I'll give you an example. My business partner he's got one of the most successful financial business in the country. And some people think they're busy. Like, he's just ridiculous. He's got 2 PAs, and his days and months are planned in advance, like 6-7 months ahead.
No time to be.
And his literally days are like, everything's just ridiculous. It's like all in a planner. And I mean, from like 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. every single day. But, this is the cost of success. Like, he's a very successful man, to the point where, he's even got his own driver, because he works while he's getting drove around, even to the gym. He's got a driver that takes him to the gym, because whilst he's in the car, he's working. So this is what I mean. People don't quite realize what it truly takes if you want to make it, whether it's a sport, whether it's in business. Unfortunately, there is a cost that you have to pay, and it will be either, your social time, your downtime, or your hobbies or whatever else you want to do. Unfortunately, something has to give in order to be able to give to something else.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a time machine and you can create more time, then fair enough.
I was going to say too, there's a clear distinction there as to what you deem to be success for you. You know, like success for him may be to have the biggest financial business in the country. And then that dictates a certain set of behaviors that's required. Whereas success to somebody else might be that, you know, they get to spend 3 hours with their kids every day. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why you want to do that, but
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I think one of the reasons that I value balance so much is growing up as a kid. I don't think my parents had much when they were children, and success to my mum and dad was financial security. And my dad just took it too far. I don't think that he had a number in mind that was like, okay, I will retire at this number. He just worked 7 days a week, like never hugged the guy, didn't invite him to my wedding. And like occasionally when he'd take a Sunday off, he would just bring work home and he'd work from home. And so for me, from a really young age, I'm like, fuck that. And so that was not success to me at all. And so maybe the point here is like success is just different things to different people.
100%.
And like, what is your success, Dean, is like my nightmare. And that's so okay.
But somehow we make it work.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
I think for me, success is somewhat a lie, because for me, I'm not really happy when I achieve things. It's more the road that leads towards it. This is why I love bodybuilding so much, because it's not the stage, it's the process behind it that I love so much. So for me, like competing, I don't even have to compete. Like this is just like a 1% of the whole game. It's the same with business though. It's the same with everything else that we do. Like the only time I was ever miserable and I was unhappy is when I didn't have the commitments that I do have right now. And I didn't really have a purpose back in the day. It was just like, I'd get up, I'd do whatever. And I'd be like, right, this is the bits that I need to do. And that's it. Once they're done, it's like, what's next? So ultimately for me, it's almost like a purpose, but yeah, I think all different people have different goals and different, obviously, passions, different ways of looking at success. 100%, I definitely agree. Ultimately, what it comes down to is, I think, generally doing what makes you happy or makes you feel fulfilled as well. Because, you know, for me, what makes me fulfilled to someone else probably sounds like a total disaster and sounds like hell. You know, that's true though. It's true, because to me, I know for a fact, like normal people, other people probably look at what we do and probably think, oh my God, what a bunch of weirdos. Like, why would you want to live your life like that? And that's a fact. But I think when we look at outside the box and we look at certain behaviors and certain traits that our lifestyle gives us and our sport gives us, I think any individual can benefit from them and will actually can use them to make their life better.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think that you would enjoy the process as much if you weren't as successful?
A pro? So
yeah, I mean, like you're a pro, you're obviously fantastic as being a bodybuilder. Your gym is becoming increasingly more and more successful, I imagine, from the outside looking in. Like I think I agree with you that the process of the journey to the bodybuilding stage is what I enjoy the most, because I'm doing something that is regimented, routine based, ticking off the boxes, all that sort of stuff. You know, you get this daily feedback on success. But if I was like outside the top 5 guy in Australia in my division, I don't know if I'd enjoy it as much, you know?
Yeah, I would, because let me just put things into context for you, because as a junior, up until the age of 22, 23, put the age of 23, I won every single show I ever did. But that's as a junior. And that's, you know, I was pretty much lucky because no freaks really turned up to the shows that I did. But that's a fact. I won every single show I did from the age of 16 till the age of like 23. And the first show that I came like 3rd or 4th, I think it was 4th, yeah, was my first year out of the juniors doing the men's heavyweights. And that was the Amateur Olympia when Mark Hecht actually won the overall. I did the heavyweight class that year and I came 4th. The lineup was ridiculous, but I still got the same feeling as I did when I won, because to me, it's not just competing and winning and doing well. Again, it's the process and making that jump forward. So even if it wasn't any good, I still think I'd enjoy the process just as much, because I would still be making progress and I would still be having these little wins, but on a smaller scale.
I mean, you're talking about the process versus outcome.
Oh man, you were like the definition of process focused, which is something Dean and I preach to our clients all the time. Like, if your goal is weight loss, a successful or failed week isn't determined by the scales. It's determined by did you do the things that you needed to do to get the result? That is it. Because I mean, if you amputate your arm or shit yourself and lose 1 kilo, that's not a successful week. You just shat yourself or amputated your arm. Like,
unless part of the process is to become part of the disabled Olympics.
That's true. But yeah, so that's exactly like you're saying that you just love doing the things that you need to do and the outcome is a bonus.
Yeah, I think it's taking little wins every day as well, because you see a sense of accomplishment every single day with what you do. So if I was seeing the success on a smaller scale, I would still be seeing success.
Yeah.
So I think I'd still be just as happy. It's just fact of the matter is I just probably wouldn't be as far ahead as I am now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the other cool thing about like being process focused like yourself is it allows you the opportunity to check your emotions before they get in the way of making poor decisions. And what I mean by that is like, if anyone's familiar with the contest prep, there'll be periods where you wake up one day and you're like, wow, I'm off. Like you feel like you've gone backwards 6 weeks.
When you look in the mirror.
When you look in the mirror, maybe your digestion's a little bit funny for a day, you've had a shitty sleep, whatever it may be. You're like, oh, whoops. And if you were very goal focused, that could make you shit the bed real quick. However,
Give me an example of shitting the bed.
Well, as in you might then just go eat a whole bunch of food, not train that day, not do your output, whatever.
Right,
you may
like
not tick off tick off the processes. However, whenever I felt like that, I always look back and go, what did I do yesterday? I did my steps, did my food, did my sleep, did my training. That was a successful day. Get on with life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. In the last chapter of our recent ebook, Untangling Fat Loss, I spoke about my mini cut that I did for a photo shoot last year. And I showed my perception in the mirror. You know, I thought I looked 10% one day, then 12% another day, then 8%, then 15%. And if I made decisions based on how I felt, my perceptions, my qualitative, like I would have been all over the place. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take these photos, do these measurements, stick to the goddamn plan. And it all worked out.
Yeah, it's bodybuilding's a funny old thing. I think anyone who can suffer with any sort of mental damage shouldn't really bodybuild, shouldn't diet, shouldn't do any sort of contest prep ever, because I think anyone that's normal, it can affect you mentally. But, you know, even someone as strong-minded as yourself, like for you to experience things like that, and you probably look at this and look at your way of thinking after that diet, and you probably think, oh my God, like what the hell was I even thinking, you know, going through emotions like this. So yeah, I think it's a funny old sport, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's that moment when you look back on a contest prep, like 6 weeks afterwards, when you're fit fed, you're feeling good, you're like, oh, I was actually lean.
I was so lean. But I want to get some lessons here for people who aren't bodybuilders. And I think that lesson from this discussion is that you don't have to be dick, skin, lean for your mind to play tricks on you. You can be a stay-at-home mom and feel amazing one day, super sexy. And then the next day, I don't know, you have your period, you're bloated, like whatever the reason is. That doesn't mean that the plan should change. That means that how we feel about our body changes, but that doesn't necessarily mean much. It means that we should stick to the plan. And if we deviate a little bit, that means that we've just tricked. We don't need to fully face plant and, like, you know, eat the whole goddamn pizza. Like the same things apply, just on a different scale.
It's like the old saying, you've got to trust the process and just crack on. 100%. It's, you can never have, you know, perfect days all the time. Something will always happen to throw you off track, whether it's in bodybuilding or anything else you do. It's like you can have the same repetition every single day, but the outcome is never going to be exactly the same as it was the day before.
Yeah, and that's the difference between a lapse and a relapse, I suppose. Like if one little thing goes wrong, that's a lapse. We don't need to continue it. You know?
Yeah, or like Chelsea says, don't miss twice.
Yeah, never miss twice. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know you as a younger bodybuilder, but how
still is.
Well, you're still very young, but you mentioned that you competed since 16 and you're not 16 anymore. How old are you now?
27.
Okay. Oh, so that's 11 years of competing. Look at me doing math so quickly. Didn't even use my fingers.
Quick maths.
Quick maths.
Quick maths.
Hey, Liz has actually
She's got a calculator there anyway.
Liz has actually experienced, is it drill? Yeah, here
drill music?
For the first time. And now she knows why that song was made.
Yeah, so Man's Not Hot, for anyone who doesn't understand the reference of quick maths. I just thought it was a funny song, but turns out it's a piss take from English music called drill music. Am I getting that right? Drill music?
To be honest, I don't even know this thing, so you can fill me in as well.
You go. Oh, well, this is what I've assumed by now listening to the genre drill, which is, you know, English rap. But Joe was telling us that if you would go drilling, you'd go around the suburbs stealing and robbing people. That's going drilling. And then the sort of rap sort of genre behind that goes to drill. And then when you listen to that quick math song,
the Man's Not Hot song.
Man's Not Hot song. Yeah. He does it in that sort of genre style.
Yeah, he takes the piss out of that style. But where was I going with that? Right. So you've been competing for 11 years. How has maybe your mindset or your approach changed from 16-year-old Kuba to 27-year-old?
Yeah, I think from like amateur to then like breakout pro to pro, I think it'd be a nice little transition.
What, from the very beginning or just from the pro?
Let's
from
go
16.
Yeah, let's go from the beginning.
From amateur. Like, don't break down every meal to me, but just
Jesus.
maybe like zoom out.
Do you wanna put your seatbelts on, because you're probably gonna think, fucking hell, how is he still alive? But on a serious note, back in the day, and you know, back in the day, the knowledge was very, very poor with what we did. It was so terrible. I mean, like, I had the guys that were the most knowledgeable guys in the gym telling me to drink tuna shakes, tuna blended with Diet Coke, to get the food in. So that was a staple of my diet from like the age of 15. And my first ever contest prep, and to this day now, I will not touch sweet potato. It makes me feel sick. The first ever prep I ever did was 6 meals of turkey and sweet potato. And that was it.
How did you not have a deficiency?
Well, he did.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm sure.
I did. Like, honestly, yeah, I did. By the end of it, it's like, it was like, I look at sweet potato now and it still makes me feel sick looking at it.
You hear of this?
And that's 11 years on.
Yeah.
Far
So,
out.
you know,
Anyone,
when we look at the
this
knowledge,
is the problem, though.
when we look at the knowledge, it was terrible. The knowledge and the advice was just terrible, and it never really changed, and it always stayed the same for many years after that, up until like even the age of like 21, where I started seeing, you know, some good guys come out in the industry and actually start preaching some great shit when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to, you know, PEDs, and when it comes to training. So for me, I was always keen to learn, and I was always very open-minded. I was never really a person to be closed off to any idea and be closed off to anything that anyone had to say, because I'm a big advocate that, you know, whether it's your client, whether it's anybody you come across, you can always learn something from someone, whether it's good or bad. You can always learn something that you can take away and apply yourself in life or bodybuilding, whatever it is. You can always learn something from someone, right? So I was always an advocate of this, and I think it was very basic when I started. The knowledge was awful, and decisions were made with nutrition. Decisions were made with the PEDs as well, was just awful. You know, training was always hard, but again, it wasn't never ever calculated. It wasn't ever precise. It was just basically going to the gym and just, you know, trash yourself every single time. There was no consideration for fatigue management. There was none of that. You was just basically going in and trying to, you know, end yourself with every workout. And prep up until the age of like 21. In fact, now probably 23. I actually had a year off when I was 22. That's right. So up until the age of 21, prep was all about who can go the hardest and who can starve themselves pretty much. So
Olympics.
I remember the prep I did for NABA Universe, actually, when I was 21. That was hell. I was working doors at the time. I was PTing. And I remember my last few shifts working on the doors, and I was literally stood on a railing. I just thought, I'm so weak. I'm so tired right now. If someone literally pushes me, I'll literally not get up. So that gives you a little bit of context as to how the early days in bodybuilding went. It was just awful. It was always the meathead mentality, and the mentality, the old school mentality that everyone still has now in England, unfortunately, where, you know, the harder you go, the better. There's no consideration for pulling back. If you feel tired, you know, you don't want it enough. So you need to push harder. You know, that's just how it went. But where it all started to really change was pretty much when I turned 23, 24 is when the knowledge started to come about. And even back then, the PED use was terrible, and the advice given was still terrible. So for me, realistically, it's only the past couple of years where things started to go on the right path, where you know the ins and outs now, and the research that has come out to life without us needing to, you know, dive deep into the stuff that we probably don't understand and stuff that we probably don't really want to look at, which is the papers. And, you know, not everyone's got time to read them, but right now the amount of real knowledge that gets put out and the real advice that gets put out on social media and various sites, it's so easily accessible. So the whole process since the beginning, the way it evolved year by year, has definitely been better, more calculated, and got me to the point now where I feel like under the past couple of years, I'm able to make some real progress, and I'm able to say with confidence that I can probably bodybuild, you know, into late 30s without dying. And I'll give you a bit of context for this behind this as well. When I was dieting for the UKBFF back in the day, UKBFF used to be just what Two Bros is now. I was 23 at the time. I was doing the junior class and open heavyweights. And at 16 weeks out, one of my friends in the gym actually knows one of the world-renowned coaches. I'm not going to name names. But anyway, I got a little bit of advice from him. I was like, yeah, you know, thank you. It's pretty cool. And they sent over a drug protocol that they recommended. And that was on a daily basis. What they wanted to use was 250 tests. I think it was 210 parabolon, 100 milligram of oxy, 100 milligram of D-ball every single day.
That's not bad.
And you would grow biceps on your ears.
What are we at? We're at like 700 a day total. Nice.
That was, a day. So at that time, I just thought, the use already even back then was pretty silly anyway, but it wasn't anywhere near to, closing in on that. But
did anyone die?
When she sent that through, I just thought, hold on a minute, that's not right. I think if I actually do this stack, I probably won't even make it to the show, because I'll either kill myself or kill someone else. Because that amount of gear, it was ridiculous. So to put things into context as to the advice, what kind of advice was given back in them days versus what kind of advice is given now, and what we preach now is a totally different end of spectrum. And luckily enough, I was an idiot back then, but I was not that much of an idiot to be able to do this kind of, that kind of cycle. So luckily enough, I didn't actually do that. But I think that kind of gives people idea as to what certain people even did back in them days and what certain people advised back in them days. And that was from at the time, like that was the coach that everyone went to. Like that was the coach that was, in the limelight, so to speak.
We still know coaches in 2022.
Yeah, they still exist, unfortunately.
Yeah, they still do, and they still coach a lot of people, unfortunately. But that kind of gives a bit of context. Every single year, I think the knowledge and the principles have definitely changed. Where I like to call it an evolution, where when we look at obviously evolution of cars, and obviously how we transport things. In 1990s, it was horse and carriage, and that's when it started just developing cars, and then slowly it started developing to Ferraris now. So the only way I can describe it is, at the age of 16, I was pretty much walking. I wasn't even riding horse and carriage. It was pretty much walking. Versus now, we're sat in a Ferrari, we're driving a Ferrari. That kind of context, and that much has changed, I believe, with the approach. Yeah. The only issue that we do have right now is I feel like still so many people are stuck in the ways of doing the stupid shit with ped use, with nutrition and the training that I was arguably back in the day.
It sounds like you went from a point in time of excess to now something that seems far more controlled and calculated, which is a really interesting thing, because you've gone from having a horse and carriage physique to a Ferrari physique, and yet your approach has gone inverted to that. Whereas most people think in order to have the Ferrari, you need to be punching all of the stuff,
taking all of the drugs and doing all of the training and none of the food.
Yeah. So you're actually doing less for more now with the Ferrari.
We'll work smart, not hard. We'll work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. I definitely preach that as well, because if I carried on the way I did, I know for a fact that there would probably be some health implications that would start to come to life probably now and for the future. Luckily enough, I've pretty much had some extensive checks done to make sure that all is okay. And luckily enough, I think I got off lightly, because if I carried on the way I did back in the day, I probably wouldn't be in position that I'm right now. And I probably wouldn't be able to bodybuild for the duration that I'm planning on bodybuilding as well.
Yeah, the human body is both a blessing and a curse, I think, for individuals coming into bodybuilding, in that it's a blessing in that it is extremely resilient, especially acutely, in short term. You can beat it up pretty bad and it'll tolerate it. But the problem is people really lack the foresight to see what happens if you do that chronically now. And then, 15 years from now, what are the repercussions of that 5 years of behavior that you did?
Ziz is what happens.
Oh, fuck.
Do you know Ziz? Did he make it to England?
Ziz, the guy that had a heart attack.
Fuck, yeah. So he used to train at my gym, and was not a healthy guy. And so for those that don't know Ziz, what would you describe him? A bodybuilding legend.
No, he was,
he was 60 kilos, so he wasn't a competitive.
He was a festival icon.
Yeah, a festival icon. Bodybuilding legend is far too grandiose of a title for him. And he killed himself by just drugging himself to the gills. I think he died in a spa high on coke. Because he was taking...
In Thailand, definitely. Let's start rumors, definitely, because he found out it was a baby boy.
That's
what gave him the heart attack.
True, it's science, that's what happened.
Honestly, guys, where I'm from and the environment that I was in, I can guarantee you now that the guys that, I was involved with, especially back in the day, would probably put this to shame with their abuse.
That's frightening. That is frightening.
Like when I was 17 back in the gym that I used to train at, there was guys that was training, and mid-set, they would go in the changing rooms, have a couple of bumps, and then go back in and train. That's like mid-session. Yeah,
workout nutrition.
Yeah, that was the intro workout nutrition, you know. And this is what I mean. In a way, I feel like bodybuilding and what it gave me has kind of saved my life, because like I said earlier, I could have gone down the wrong path and my life would have been probably a lot different to what it is right now. Whereas bodybuilding has gave me a platform and has gave me the means to achieve to what I do, to achieve some great things and actually have a good life, not end up being a loser. But for me, the whole progression kind of thing, it's like I said to you earlier, guys, the better I became at bodybuilding, the more I got invested into it, and the more I got invested into the process, and the more I wanted to look into how things actually work. So it was almost like back in the day, it was blind leading the blind, whereas over time, you start to actually get interested into how does this actually work? How will this benefit me? And what do I need to do in order to maximize the progress? So this is kind of where it all started to get better rather than worse. And the pedjo started to get less. And we started to actually use a better approach when it comes to nutrition, whether it's meal variety or simple little things like even eating all your veg. You know, these are the little things that, you know, even me, just recently, I probably started to value a lot more than ever, just because of the way it makes you feel.
So you don't just eat broccoli? Is that what you're trying to tell us here, Coop?
Definitely not. Just the broccoli days and sweet potato days have definitely long gone. Yeah.
What is it with broccoli then? I really want to know.
I know.
Do you do?
I think I do. Like this is just my theory. So for those of you that aren't in the bodybuilding space, broccoli seems to be up on a pedestal. And when people say vegetables, they mean broccoli, right? I think it's because most vegetables, if we're talking non-starchy vegetables, have what, 2% carbs, 2 grams of carbs per 100 grams. Broccoli has point something.
0.4.
Okay, there you go. So way less carbs, and it's 4% protein. So for every 100 grams of broccoli, you'll get 4 grams of protein. Whoop-de-fucking-do. It's not a lot of protein. But I just wonder if people hear somewhere, broccoli is the highest protein vegetable and the lowest carb vegetable, and they think protein good, carb bad. And like that's my
think
theory.
people realize that it's one of the lowest carbohydrate vegetables, and so are mainly greens. So then all of a sudden, instead of actually thinking about maybe looking into the rest, and they just went, greens are good.
Yeah, greens are good. Colored vegetables bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think of that theory?
Listen, I don't care if it's bad. It tastes good, and it's allowing me to eat plenty of food. So I will get me all the veg now. I'm happy to eat it. I think, do you know what? This is exactly what it comes down to. It's just more so lack of education and people demonizing these things without actually knowing what it can give you. And I think it's so closed off still in our industry, and probably industry in other countries as well. But I know for a fact in England, it's still so backwards when it comes to nutrition and, you know, and peds and training. It's all still very, very backwards.
Yeah, it blows my mind when I hear people saying like, yeah, you have like peppers and carrot in prep? Like, you mean the vegetables? Yeah, of course I do. Like there's this misconception or misunderstanding, or just a complete ignorance to the fact that they're not even that calorically dense.
No, I mean, we've got to put it into context.
I think people would rather have extra 5 grams of cream of rice than 100 grams of peppers, and I just think that's just retarded, completely retarded. So
the Flex Success team, Dean and I and the other coaches, developed a program recently called the Better Bodies program that just went live last week, and this was one of the main drivers. It wasn't necessarily targeted towards bodybuilders, but just people who need to improve their nutritional IQ and learn about like how to eat, like remove the anxiety around food, where we're no longer grouping food as good and bad, figuring out what foods are satiating, what keep us full for fewer calories, what might be some smart swaps, like swapping honey for, I don't know, fucking some other type of syrup. You're just swapping 80 grams of carbs for 80 grams of carbs. It don't matter, you know?
Yeah, it's funny when Kuba at the beginning said, oh, Dean probably looks at things as numbers now. I'm like, yeah, I do, but it changes with the time of, or the goal, you know, like the off season, it might be like, I'm looking for something that is energy dense. Whereas in prep, my number that I'm looking at is like, what is this rate on the satiety scale for me? You know, like, will this keep me full? 7. Good. I'll eat that, you know?
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be.
Or maybe not having banana as often and having apple more frequently, because you could have double the amount for the carbs.
It's funny, in this household, we're currently staying at Jeffery's house, as you know, and Joe and I are non-banana eating fruit individuals because we go for the dark berries because we can have more of them, right? Because we're both dieting. And then the girls are smashing the bananas because they're like, we're in maintenance, so we're good.
Mate, I'm all about berries. It's, do you know what? That's actually something that's quite common, because Meg is exactly the same.
Your girlfriend?
It's like, I never have bananas. She loves them because she can never get enough food in. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. But do you know what you mentioned? I really think it's not just normal people that would benefit from something like this. I honestly think a lot of seasoned professionals would probably benefit from actually learning how to eat better.
Yeah.
And I personally think it would make the preparations for the shows far easier.
Oh,
because,
massively, man.
Hey, I'm out of pros I see literally just eat chicken and fucking rice all day. It's, if I had to prep like this, I would probably not compete anymore, because I've done preps where I ate just fish and rice or just turkey and sweet potato, and it's hell. Like, who wants to eat like that?
Oh.
It doesn't make it enjoyable. Like,
No.
they literally was the worst preps of my life when I prepped like that. And I will always say this to people, it's like, you know, I'm quite big on learning from mistakes. If you continue doing the same mistakes that you know you've made over and over again, then you're just an idiot. So you need to kind of learn from it.
Yeah.
And especially the eating side of things, it's like, as much as we all want to say that we're strong-minded, when we get hungry, we want to get food focused, it needs to get managed somehow. And one thing that's not going to help you manage it is not actually knowing that, look, it's okay to eat these foods and not demonizing all these foods, because that's the biggest thing that I see in industry as well. People demonize so many different food sources so much that they restrict themselves so much, it leads to binging and all different sorts of food issues. Whereas with something that your guys bringing out, that would benefit everyone. I don't just think it benefit normal people, because
Everyone
I
is
can tell
welcome
you
to
now,
join.
guys, 80% of professionals, they don't know how to eat.
Yeah.
That's scary, considering that there's a lot of transfer from people looking towards bodybuilding as the gold standard of how to manipulate a physique, because all they see is the external shell.
And then those people teach other people how to have eating disorders. We have a whole section in this program that I mentioned to you, the Better Bodies program, on hunger and cravings management, because just like you said, we need to manage it somehow. And of course, the whole purpose of a prep isn't to be enjoyable, but you're giving yourself the best chances of success if you're decreasing the pain that you're putting yourself in. We're more likely to stay on track if we're only a 3 out of 10 hungry, not a 10 out of 10 hungry.
Yeah, or if there's just the simple perception that there's an opportunity to change your food should you wish to.
Yeah.
You know, there's this period of time where flexible dieting got popular, and it's fantastic because it taught people that you could eat some different food types. Great. But I think the greatest thing that people can learn from learning about food is that it gives you the mental opportunity to make a choice.
And just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like people will often scoff at me when I say I don't actually get food cravings in prep. I get food volume cravings. You know, I want more food, but I don't really ever feel like I want this food, because if I truly wanted it, I could eat it. It just, like we've talked about today with commitments to things, it comes at a cost. Like, if I'm going to make a homemade pizza, that's fine, but I'm probably going to be hungry.
Yeah. You could eat half a donut
absolutely.
or a huge bowl of fruit. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the choices you make. So ever since I started actually looking at food from a similar perspective, it's like, I never look at food as if I can't have something. It's my choice and the choices I make. But even like you said, when you actually eat the stuff that you enjoy every single day, you don't want anything else. You just want more of it. And that's the beauty. That's beauty of prep. And I think that makes your prep so much more enjoyable as well, because you're not constantly thinking about the food. You're thinking about the process and objectives, which that's what you should be really focusing on. But I think this is exactly where a lot of people fail. And do you know what? Myself included, especially, you know, back in the day, it was terrible. The approach was terrible towards nutrition, towards peds, towards everything. It was just so retarded. But lesson learned, you know, I probably wouldn't be where I am now, and I probably wouldn't be sat here having this conversation with you guys if I didn't make these mistakes and didn't learn from them as well.
I mean, Will Crozier, who we've had on the podcast before, he's an Australian powerlifter. He said that if you don't look back at yourself a few years ago and are embarrassed about what you used to do, you haven't grown. You haven't developed yourself as a coach or as a person. And it's so true. I look at some programs I used to write, or I don't know, some things I used to do with clients, and I'm like, God, I'm so glad that I've developed since then. So it's kind of a good thing. Hey, I also wanted to share, you mentioned that the way that you used to do things was so terrible. And, you know, now the industry has grown. I do think a lot of it comes down to pure luck of who you end up being influenced by. And because there's so much information out there, both good and bad, lots of people are just being influenced by poor sources. So I thought maybe I could share, and then you also mentioned staying up to date with papers, but not everyone has time to do that. So I thought we could share some people that influence us that we think would be great for people to follow up on if they don't feel like their circle of influence is great. And some things I have in mind for people who aren't particularly scientifically minded or are really busy are some research reviews. So the MASS research review, MASS, is awesome. The Weightology research review from, who's it? James Kruger, isn't it?
Krieger, yep.
James Kruger, sorry. And then there's Alan Flanagan's.
Alan Flanagan, yep.
And Alan Aragon's research review as well, AARR.
Yeah, and even maybe from a listening perspective, I think Iron Culture from Eric Helms.
Oh yeah.
And Omar
Yusuf
is fantastic because one, there's some comedy value in it. And two, it's actually a real good broad spectrum of conversation.
Yeah, Iron Culture is the podcast, guys, not a research review.
I think Eric has been a leader for quite some time, hasn't he?
He should be the president of the world. I love Eric so much.
One, he's too nice, and he gives back so much. You know, we've had really positive experiences with the people we've had on our podcast. With like Eric was willing to give as much time as we wanted.
What's his name? Greg Knuckles.
Greg Knuckles was incredible.
Yeah,
he was cooking a meal. You know, if he was meal prepping while we were doing it, our internet cut out 3 times. He's like, "I'll just hang out. Like, don't worry about it.
I'll wait." Yeah, he's a legend. But anyways, what are some people? It doesn't necessarily have to be research reviews. Maybe just Instagram accounts or something like that that you guys want to share with the audience.
I think first, such a good point you made, because influencers are definitely huge, and I think the reason why I made some of the mistakes I did is because of the wrong influences and the wrong advice I was given by the people that at the time was the people that were meant to be the ones that we go to. And I think the worst thing right now is the people that are highly popular and the people that are in limelight, unfortunately, aren't the people that are giving out the best information right now. And that's for general public and bodybuilding. You know, unfortunately, most bodybuilders still follow, you know, the guys that are doing the kind of mistakes and the dumb shit that I was doing. And that is the worst thing, because I think in future we are going to see a lot of people die from the mistakes they're doing now. And that's the thing. If people aren't looking up to the guys that are preaching the right things, like the John Jewetts and, you know, the people like Joe, and all they are looking up to is guys that are from Q8, you know, who's going to survive the longest, let's face it. And that's the harsh reality of it, to be honest. But the main people that I have had the most influence on me have definitely been John, on a personal level as well. John Jewett, he's definitely been the man that has had the most influence on me. AJ Morris as well, one of the natty guys that is in the country. You know AJ, don't you, Dean?
I know him, yeah. Yeah, I think we need people like yourself and people like John, and like obviously very high level competitors, but like they're the competitors that are just on the fringe of that sort of top echelon where they've got the big name coach that are trying to crack into that space, which is what we need. You know, we need people like you that have some backing and some shoulder and some weight behind you to say, hey, this is actually what I do, and it's okay too. Because we do have young fellas that are looking at Mr. Olympia getting coached by ex-coach and assuming that that's the only way forward, unfortunately.
For listeners, I'm going to put the Instagram handles of the people that you recommended in the show notes in case anyone wanted to go ahead and follow them.
Yeah, John Jewett's great. He's got an awesome thing called J3 University.
Yeah. Dr. Scott Stevenson, I think, is also the main person as well. Like Dr. Scott is someone that I think Dr. Scott is literally the first person that actually made me realize that a lot of these things I was getting told was just complete and utter trash. And he was the first person that made me think outside the box a little bit as well. Like Scott can break down science so well. Like from the background that I came from, when I was listening to Scott, like he made me understand science so much better. And I think that is what we need. I think there's so many people that are so knowledgeable right now, but unfortunately they can't communicate it.
Yeah.
And they can't relay the information either. So the key for me, and this is why I'm such a big fan of Scott, and I think indirectly I owe Scott a lot as well, because he's changed my perception of so many things. Like if you truly know something inside out, you can explain it to someone who doesn't have a Scooby-Doo about it. And that was me back in the day, you know, when I was listening to Scott, like he made the most complex things sound so simple. And I think this is what we are missing right now, because there's so much content out there that's put out by certain individuals that's so amazing, but the delivery of that content is so poor, it's putting people off.
Yeah.
I think it's a real art science communication, because it can either go two ways. We can oversimplify something to the point that it's untrue, or we can overcomplicate something to the point that people, you know, the science communicator thinks that all these little details are important and the person is overwhelmed and doesn't listen. So it sounds like Scott is giving that middle ground where he's simplifying enough where it makes sense, but without doing it so much that it's untrue.
Yeah. Scott is incredible. He's incredibly charismatic as well. Plus, he is. If there was ever a poster boy for somebody who spent time in a lab suit and then time in some posing trunks and then time in some gym clothes and then time in some just raggedy old clothes driving around America and just being a normal person, he's done it all. And he loves dogs.
Honest.
What a wholesome guy.
He's a guy.
He's unbelievable. He ticks every box for me. He really does. It's I had a podcast with Dr. Scott for 2 hours, and he literally made my hair stand on the back of my neck for 2 hours when he was talking. He's unbelievable. There's nothing that man cannot really take and break down in detail. It's like just recently, obviously, everyone's got into L-carnitine as well. And he's literally gone and spent like a month studying it now. And he's just dived into it so much. And it just makes you laugh because nobody else does that. It's like some people come up with all these things and then Scott will just completely break it down and dive into it much deeper than anyone can even fathom. And it's just unbelievable to see. Definitely people like this, like John has been the main one. Another person that I feel like is definitely turned it around a lot has been JP, because everyone knows what JP used to stand for and everyone knows what JP used to show for the industry. And I think this past year, especially now, Jordan has I think he's turned a page in his life where he's really scaled back on the anabolic use and he's definitely pushing forwards more with the healthier approach and more of the approach of actually wanting people to stay alive and not make mistakes he has made with pushing the boundaries and pushing the protocols that he has. And I think that's a big thing, because hopefully people will look at Jordan now and be like, right, if he's preaching that and he's not preaching pushing grams and grams of gear, maybe that's the right thing to do so. And I think this is what we are lacking at the moment. We are lacking leaders in the industry really push the healthier side of things and push the more of the longevity side, because as much as we've got amazing people out there preaching it now, we've got obviously Joe Jeffries, we've got John Jewett, we've got plenty of these guys doing it. Obviously, I think Victor Black's still around, unless he's actually made everyone fall out with the world.
Everyone's
if he hasn't, the Victor
maybe,
Black's
but
still
he's
out,
still on Instagram.
Yeah, he's not been banned yet. No. I'm only kidding. But that's a fact. That's a fact. You know, I think if more people that were really, really at the top of popularity game as well came out and actually pushed these things, I think we would see far better outcomes with less health implications as well.
Yeah, I think people that have a big influence on social media have the responsibility to do so. I don't think it's, you know, their privilege and it should be an option. I think it's their responsibility because they have such an impact on people. And shouldn't we make that impact positive or just less harmful? At least let's not go all the way to positive, less harmful.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, that's not the way cookie crumbles these days.
No,
everyone wants to get to the end of the race before they start it.
Yeah. Now I feel like we could talk to you all day, but I know that you're a busy guy and time is getting on. So we want to wrap up with, why don't we just go straight to Would You Rather? Hey?
Yeah, I was going to say, we normally ask for something we're sharing, but we've just shared a whole bunch of awesome people. So
we have.
We'll jump
do you
that.
have a Would You Rather?
I do have a Would You Rather, but I already know the answer now based on our conversation.
Okay, well maybe I'll come up with a different Would You
We
Rather.
normally have a really fucked up Would You Rather. We used to have a game called Shitty Choices, but the Would You Rather for you is very topic specific. It is, would you rather...
Are you going to ask the original one?
Yeah, and then you can think of another one.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you rather win an Olympia but lose 20 years off your life, or have no guarantee of winning the Olympia but have full control over your health?
If you asked me 5 years ago, it would have been win an Olympia. Right now, full control of my health.
Okay.
And that, my friends, is called progression.
That is called progression. I like it. My Would You Rather. So every morning on my Instagram, I ask a different Would You Rather. I'm trying to think of one that I haven't actually asked anyone before.
I don't know if it's the way that you position this, but every time we get to this stage, I watch the guest's face and I just watch them go, all right, here we fucking go.
Would you rather? Do you know what a
I'm
chode
sweating.
is? Do you know what a chode is?
Say again?
A chode? Do you know what that is?
Like a fat penis. That's
Yeah,
what chode is.
No, it has to be short though. It can't just be fat.
No, it is a penis that is wider than it is long. Okay.
Right,
Would you rather have constantly lactating nipples,
Oof.
right? All the time. They're not like gushing, but they're just like constantly dripping, or a chode?
Lactating nipples all day.
Would you? Okay.
Yeah.
It will ruin your tan on stage. You're aware of this?
I'll just get him cut out.
No, you can't. You have to deal.
No,
you have to deal.
You can't.
Otherwise you
Oh
just
my
have to get a
God,
penis extension.
no.
No, you are dealing with these lactating nipples.
Wait. I'll pull that one back. Thing is, if you've got lactating nipples, you're not really going to make use of a normal penis anyway. So
That's true.
you're not. You know,
It's true.
so I think
I
I'd
wouldn't
have to
date a
pick
guy who
shirt.
had wet
No,
nips.
but okay, you meet a girl. Could you not band-aid them up for the t-shirt
You could try and put pads over them or something, sure.
and just never take your shirt
Yeah,
off?
but
Just
then it'd
be
be
a porn
like,
star.
yeah, but then it'd be like, why have you got pads over your nipples? They'd be like, that's a bit weird. And you know, as much as women say that they don't care about these things, right?
Oh, they're lying.
I'm not being
Of course
funny.
they are.
You know, nobody, like, come on, nobody gets attracted to leaking nipples. Like, you fall in love with the personality in that. You fall in love with the person, but come on.
No, initially, of course, you have to be sexually attracted to someone before you can allow yourself to fall in love with. Like, no one's going to put their dick in your personality, right? So
100%.
I agree with you. There's no arguments there. So does that mean you're going with the
Just
chode?
wait. How wide versus long is this chode?
Oh, it just
Because you know, if we're talking like let's just say it's 4 inches long,
Mhm.
but 6 inches wide.
No, it just has to be like.
No, I'm going to retract that. I don't know. I don't even know what that looks like. It couldn't be any longer than 2 inches. That's a because fuck, I don't know.
Whatever. It's bad either way.
You have to make it usable. Yeah, you have to make it usable.
I'm sure there's a woman out there for you with your 3 and 4 incher.
With my chode. Yeah.
Maybe the woman from what's that from Mean Girls, the one with a wide set vagina and a heavy flow.
Yeah, she's fine. Yeah.
Do you know that movie?
Yeah, I recognize it, and now I'm regretting my decision. Now I don't want a chode anymore.
What are you choosing? What's your choice?
I'd have to choose a chode, 100%.
Okay, all right.
Ooh, that's tough.
On that note, if you found value in this podcast, we are going to wrap up on that. Please like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, take a screenshot.
Give us a chody thumbs up.
Give us a chody thumbs up. Where can people find you, by the way, actually, before we wrap up?
Instagram on YouTube.
Okay. What's your Instagram handle?
Just type in Kuba. There's not many Kubas, so just as soon as people type in Kuba, it generally comes up. So Kuba. Please don't make the mistake of putting C in. I think a lot of people still put the C, but yeah, it's K. It's just like Cuba, but spelled with a K.
Okay.